So thank you guys very much. This is the weekly Cyberbull space. And I think what we're going to do today is we're going to play a game, and we're going to, talk about whether or not kind of a truth or dare, or maybe truth or false, which of these new stories that came out, new data that was reported this week is true or false, talking about Tesla and its competitors. So first of all, the latest statistics are showing that globally, electric vehicle sales are actually on track to grow very strongly. Again, this year, 17 million sales. It seems to be picked up mostly in China. At the same time, Ford announced that their inventory for the F-150 truck is now really grown to 135 days. And then another data point that came out this week was the auto credit lines have fallen, worse since 10 years. People can't borrow money as well as they could in the past, and it's just continued to fall in the last several quarters. And then Tesla China, though, reported very strong numbers, 15.5 thousand vehicle sales for last week, and they're just under 5,000 below what they were doing last year. We've heard that General Motors is reducing their workforce in China, and they're talking to their partner SAIC to try to do a restructuring of their operations there. Volkswagen is reported to have delayed their Trinity SUV to 2032. They need to fix software issues, better allocate investments. At the same time, people are saying, hey, why did Tesla no longer need a reservation to order a Cybertruck Foundation Series? Are they being desperate? And then finally, we've got Uber CEO being interviewed Friday and on the Logan Bartlett show, and he was saying that he thinks that he has tremendous doubts that Tesla has the ability to execute robotaxi. It's tremendous difficulty on the customer service side, as well as his skepticism that Tesla owners will let their strangers into their car. He said things like, when at the peak hours when people need to rent these cars, that's also the same time that owners will not want to rent them out. At the same time, after all that, he said, I'd like to partner with Uber. So let's talk about Tesla and their competitors. Let's start with you, Jeff. You have brought up some in your post recently. You've been talking about how there's, all these data points are coming out to show that the legacy auto is about to start to see some pain.
Yeah, and it's really how it relates to Tesla. I think it's what's really important. These companies are going to spin themselves into whatever kind of business trouble they may get into. The question is like, what does it do to Tesla? And if I go back to your comment on EV sales growth, and if you look, it's growing really well in China and in the US, that growth is small. It's still better than ICE and EV. ICE and hybrid together are net negative, and there is still some EV growth. But what happened? There's a dynamic that happened, and it all kind of ties together. And we noticed in the end of last year, call it end of Q3, right around the strike, where the UAW strike was occurring, that these legacy makers were building up EV inventory. They made product that cost too much that people didn't want to buy at those levels. The product didn't work well. The dealers didn't want to sell the product. And then they built up a bunch of EV inventory, and the EV inventory was getting up to 150 days, 200 days. And then they carried that into this year. And it's still high. It's still relatively high. But now the total U.S. auto market's up at 100 days. But if you want to tie all these things together, there's a difference between the sellout of a vehicle, like selling out to a consumer, and then a legacy automaker building a vehicle and moving it to wholesale. And so what's happened is the reason why you see some of that leveling off in EV growth or adoption is they fill the channel. The channels are full, so there's no more product to move. Excuse me. There's no more product to move from factories to wholesale, where you would get that greater EV growth. It's already in the channel. So now they have to discount it and move it from the channel to consumers. That's not an additional sale. That won't be another tick in the EV column. The tick in the EV column occurred in the case of their network, when they moved from the factory to the dealership. Why am I bringing this up? That's why you see EV growth a little bit flattening out. in the US. And then now if you take another metric and you look at market share, now market share is based off of VIN data and then what actually sells through. So that's why, like, when this data is shown on television, it can be very confusing because they're like, oh, look what's happening to Tesla. They don't have half the market anymore. They have 48% of the market, whatever. There's a difference in how the data is calculated or tabulated. When they move a product, when Legacy moves a product from the factory to the dealer, the wholesale dealer network, that's a sale. It's not market share. It's not a VIN that's sold through to a consumer. When Tesla sells a product, it moves from the fact, it's direct to consumer. It moves from the factory directly to the consumer. They cut that whole thing out. So why did I go through that whole thing? What's happening now in the broader U.S. auto market is the broader U.S. auto market has elevated itself to over 100 days of inventory. That's everything. That's EVs included. And that is usually a precursor then to heavy discounting and then slowing factories down because basically the channels are full. They target about 50 days of inventory in the dealer's channel. So they've got double in some cases, in several models. They have triple and quadruple what they need. So the dealers are telling the factories to hold off. So you've already seen some announcements with Stellantis. I think you're going to see more. I think you may see some of the automakers even warn, either starting this quarter or next quarter, but you're going to see, the first thing you'll see are shifts slowing down, and then you'll see them shutting down factories and shifts, and then you'll see the furloughs and layoffs. Why does this mean to Tesla? They're going to be heavily discounting product and moving it through the channel, and that could weigh on Tesla sales for some period of time in some locations. But I think Tesla's doing a pretty good job with lowering the total cost to the consumer with these interest rate deals, and I think they're keeping up with it pretty well. But anyway, that's what I'm seeing on that whole front.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. That's great. Omar, let's do a true or false, truth or dare. Some people are saying Tesla is no longer changed their policy. You no longer need a reservation to order a new Cybertruck Foundation series. Does that mean that they went through 1 million reservations and nobody wants to buy Cybertrucks anymore? True or false?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of bad reporting on this topic. The Foundation series is now available for anyone to order, but that doesn't mean that they're only going to produce the Foundation series. So the price hasn't been raised. The plan to produce an $80,000 version hasn't changed, but they're just making the Foundation series available for anyone to order before they stop producing it and go down to the non-Foundation series. And this has been confirmed by Wes Morrill at Tesla. So the company has responded. Most people probably didn't see it, but clearly they're not planning to cancel the non-Foundation series. That's a misunderstanding of what happened here. Now, if you're showing an order page where you have a $100,000 truck, you may not necessarily want to highlight the fact that there's an $80,000 and a $60,000 version coming. But at some point they're going to stop producing the Foundation series, and the order page will reflect what the options are at that time.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Yeah, we just saw some videos, a lot of inventory, those parking lot throughers. Maybe they go, there's so much inventory out there, they can't sell them anymore. Those were the days. So let's talk stock a little bit. Ask you, Xander, have you seen this interview of Dara Khosrowshahi, the CEO of Uber? And he was kind of both at the same time saying that he doesn't think that Tesla will be able to launch a robotaxi, but at the same time he wants to partner with them. Uber stock fell the last month down to $58 from something over 70, but then it popped up in the last week back up to $71 from 58. So after the earnings, people are liking that. And then Tesla, of course, is flat. So what's your what are you watching? Are you following the stocks?
I don't track Uber stock too much, but I do have some numbers to run by you. In terms of reaction uh, to Dario, I think he's got a conflict of interest. So I did not watch the interview. I've seen some clips and heard the discussion around it. So, but it's like I don't want to pay attention to someone that has a dog in the race that's going to talk down and say, "Hey, you guys aren't going to do very well." Without us, like you should partner with us. Really, please partner with us. So, like their stock recovering kind of makes sense. We had an exogenous event with the carry trade. They're almost recovered, but you know who isn't recovered? Going back to what you were talking with Jeff about regarding the channel stuffing. If you look at Ford, their stock went from 14.62 or something like that to $9.34, and it's slowly recovering. Unlike the Uber stock, which is recovered a little bit more. And I find it amazing how some investors will buy it because it's such a great deal because they get a dividend. And same thing with GM. Went from 50 to 39. It's recovering, but it's not having that same pop. So regarding the Cybertruck, the VIN numbers. Last week I had a VIN assigned for the Beast, and it was 26,500 or so. And then I think we saw Joe post this morning or yesterday regarding a VIN being assigned of like 28,000. And so in a week you're at 28,000 and a half. So you're at a run rate of about 2,000, which kind of confirms another post that we saw of someone saying that they had a neighbor or they had two trucks on their street that were produced X amount of days apart. And the VIN numbers, if you did the math on it, it's like a run rate of about 2,200. So I don't know if we've had other confirmations of run rate, but I find that interesting that uh, Tesla is ramping, and it's logical. Why wouldn't you go through the entire order book, make sure that anyone who wants the Foundation series, even if they placed an order all the way at the end and they just came around to, once they saw the truck and they want it now, they don't want to wait for, the single motor or the tri motor being available, without Tesla going through the entire order book again. It's just logic, right? It's good business.
Okay. I want to ask the question about Uber. So the reason one of their stocks went up because they beat across the board in their earnings report, right? Earnings per share, revenues beat expectations. Their gross bookings actually grew 19% compared to last year. Everything's going up. They have said, Darrow said that he sees no impact on the recession or the current economy on bookings. Doing really well. But then what he said, I want to break it down and ask you guys what you think about this. So he said that he has real doubts that Tesla can execute a robo-taxi business. First, he said customer service is something that we need to build out. Second, he said that vehicle owner skepticism about letting strangers into their cars. And then he said that peak ride sharing times are going to coincide with the times that owners want to use their own vehicles. Those were the three key points. So let's go through each one of them. Omar, what's your thoughts on these 3 points?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous. It reminds me of Steve Ballmer laughing at the iPhone when it came out, saying, "Oh, it doesn't have a real keyboard." I mean, this guy knows. Obviously, he's got to defend his company, but this guy knows that he's full of shit. He knows that one of the biggest vehicles on the Uber network are Teslas. As a matter of fact, they have an entire section called Comfort Electric where you can order a Tesla specifically or another EV, but they're all Teslas. They even rent out Teslas to drivers through Hertz. So they're aware that Teslas are one of the most popular cars for drivers on the network, that it makes a lot of sense. They offer incentives, integration with Tesla. They can even check the battery status of your Tesla and only give you trips that are within your available range. So, I mean, the idea that, for example, um, they don't know how to handle customer service. I mean, they deal with obviously all of their customers, millions of customers. It's not like Uber really has that much customer service either. They typically just handle things behind the scenes. When was the last time you talked to an Uber customer service person? Things like throwing up, leaving lost items in the car. Waymo has figured this all out. It works. It's not really as much rocket science as he'd like to think. And it's not just about owners letting strangers into their car. We're talking about the car being able to move around in the world on its own, do any task you can think of. There will probably be companies that build and maintain fleets just to serve rideshare demand. There'll be people who take their car home, then send it out to give a few more rides. So I think he's kind of grasping at straws here a little bit, and he understands that this is an incredibly disruptive threat. This will either make their business worth 10 times more or worth nothing. And what I think is really interesting about Tesla, if you check out some of those sketches of their mobile app in the videos, is that they're really featuring a deep integration between the car and the app. This isn't just something where you're just calling a car and it's just some random car. While the car's coming, you can control the temperature in the car. You can turn the seat heaters or seat coolers on or off. You can set the music to your favorite music service. And you can even configure the driving profile, assertive, chill, standard, all your preferences, things about you, it'll remember. And you can say, hey, I want you to drive in a very chill way. I want you to be very relaxed, not drive too fast. And it'll remember that. And it'll pick you up, drive the way you like, at the temperature you like, with the driving profile you like, and then pick up the next person and respond to them as well. So I think they have the potential to offer something here that's really much better than Uber. And it would work in a pretty similar way where anyone can put a car on the network, just like Uber. And, whether or not owners want to do it themselves, I don't think that's where the majority of the supply on the network is going to come from. I think Tesla's going to operate a large fleet themselves, and there's going to be third parties, mostly commercial, not individuals, mostly commercial, that specialize in just maintaining that fleet.
Great answer. Fantastic. I was going to ask you that. So, did you hear about the Uber partnership with BYD? They announced that, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. They both, as far as I know, have not made any kind of plans for autonomy. Uber, in fact, let that go. In that interview, he talked about this decision he had to make to let go of their advanced technology group, which was the autonomous part. He thinks that he'll be able to partner with a company to do that in the future. BYD, we don't know what they're doing, right? They might have thousands of people working on it in the background, but as early as last year, one of their top executives says, we don't think investing in autonomy is the right thing to do either. What's your thoughts about the partnership between Uber and BYD, if that's a consideration?
I mean, I think it's really typical. It's kind of like a fleet sales deal. They're trying to get cheap cars to their drivers, cheap EVs. And BYD has a lot of cheap EVs available all around the world. My parents were just traveling to, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, places like that. And they've got BYD EVs all over the place, super cheap ones that are used as cabs. So I think it's kind of just trying to get a deal to move some of that excess supply. But, there's going to be no cars in the future that aren't self-driving. It's like, the market for black and white TVs, or the market for, you know, mobile phones that weigh 10 pounds, like you saw the guy using in Wall Street. Certain old technologies, they just cease to exist. So any company that doesn't embrace autonomy, they're not going to have any product to sell. There's going to be zero demand for their product. So BYD better come up with a better strategy, or they're not going to have a very bright future.
Yeah. Welcome, Simon. Simon's a portfolio manager. Welcome up.
The other thing
Welcome.
I found interesting, Herbert, about the BYD thing was just the timing of the announcement being the week before the original planned 8.8 Tesla event. So I don't know if that was a coincidence or not. I don't think it was. But yeah, I think it is a little bit of a fleet thing. And, BYD has recently changed their position on autonomy. They went from kind of a stance of like, no one's going to figure this out. We have other priorities that we can spend our resources on to, there's reporting of like a several thousand unit team that they're pulling together to work on, the autonomous driving challenge. So something's changed. Who knows if the reporting's good or not? But yeah, it seems like Uber is kind of jumping from one potential solution provider, like they have their own internal development effort, which they actually acquired, and then they acquired a company called Auto, which had a lot of ex-Google people, and then I think they have a stake in Aurora. So like they're kind of jumping from solution to solution. As we talked about in the video, the thing that Dara didn't say was, wow, we evaluated what he could have said was like, we evaluated our own internal effort and we realized like we were on a path to nowhere. So we decided to cut it. And that's really ultimately what most likely happened. It wasn't most everybody else's, I think they may have more quickly come to the conclusion that others are going to have to come to over the next maybe year or two.
What's your thoughts on his positions that it's going to be hard for Tesla to do this? Customer service, people don't want to rent it out to strangers, right? Cleaning up the car, those kind of things.
Yeah, these are things that Tesla, like the hardest thing that Tesla is solving for is to get, this 2 or 3 ton machine to move through the world and drive perfectly. And like the magnitude of innovation that's involved in doing that versus the magnitude of detecting if somebody forgot something on a car seat are two different things. Like, did somebody forget something on a car seat? Tesla could figure that out probably in a couple weeks of work, doing computer vision, doing, image differentiation or subtraction methods. There's things that they can do. Are people going to want to, the whole thing about peak times is a supply demand utilization piece. If people don't want to put their cars on the network during peak times, then more cars are going to be produced then that will be available to go on the network during peak times. That's how this whole thing is a utilization equation, and that's ultimately what will happen. And finally, the thing that Tesla's working on is between the used car network and then this new vehicle they're working on getting the startup price, that starting out the door price for a vehicle that can drive autonomously. They're getting that price very low, and by doing that, they're reducing the barriers to entry. There's a lot of people that believe that the robotaxi can cost whatever it costs because eventually it will break even, in terms of giving autonomous rides. That's not the right way to think about it when you've got a high amount of capital that's needed to start a fleet or to start a business. You actually want to reduce the barriers to entry as much as possible and get the time to break even to be as quick as possible. And I think that's the other unique thing that Tesla is working on that I don't think others have fully grasped yet.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Simon, welcome. Come on up.
Hey, sorry, I had it on mute there. Just to the point of using the vehicle. So I actually went through the process. I was driving back from the country with my wife, and I said, she said, what are you going to do with all these cars? I'm about to receive a Cybertruck up here in Canada, and I've got an S and an X, and I thought, okay, well, should I empty one off the lot? And what occurred to me is that Elon said this many times. He said, when robotaxi is solved, this will be the greatest appreciation of assets in history. And so I'm thinking with that, and I said to my wife, I said, well, maybe I'm just going to test the robotaxi network and see how it goes, because I like to test out all Tesla products. And she said, what are you going to do? You're not going to start cleaning cars. And I said, yeah, you're probably right. However, when this is approved, fleet managers, Uber drivers, there will be a tremendous, and I think everybody in this space is going to like this reply, there's going to be such a tremendous demand to buy any kind of Tesla that can go off and make you the amount of money that it costs in 1 year to buy the car. And I realized, I don't know if I'm going to put my car on the network. I probably will to try it out. Again, it's probably a year or two out, but I think that even if you're not willing to, your car will come in such high demand. And there's so many people that buy cars today that say, you know what, I want to supplement my income. What do you think? All of the Uber drivers that I speak to, that's not their full-time job. They are out there making extra money, paying for the car, and running some other business on the side. So that's my take on that.
That's fantastic, Simon. I mean, you just bought the plaid version of the S, and you're like showing that, and then now you're buying the Cybertruck.
Oh, here's an interesting take on the Foundation series.
Yeah.
Because I think according to Cybertruck Owners Club, I think I'm around 30,000. And I mean, I placed my order within 5 minutes of when they said the evening of the event launch, within 5 minutes. And the only reason why it wasn't sooner is because the site was crashing. So I'm maybe 30,000 in line. And I have a very close friend of mine who's probably about 500,000 in line. And he was expecting it to probably be within another couple of years before he could receive. Maybe he's 1 million in line. I'm not sure exactly. And so I received my invite, and I thought, you know, if I wait a couple of months, I can probably receive the dual motor and not have to pay the $28,000 premium. Mind you, the FSD is pretty valuable. And my personal decision was, okay, I'm going to take the Foundation series. I went to the factory. I walked the Cybertruck line. I'm so involved with this company. I said, okay, do it. And I think a whole bunch of people in this community also nudged me to do it. I'm okay with that.
Guilty as charged.
My friend, again, and I think this is actually really smart what Tesla is doing, is he thought he'd have to wait a couple of years. And he's actually a client, and he called me last night and he said, hey, guess what? I just got a reservation. I said, well, here's the option. You can either take this one or you probably have to wait a couple of years. And he said, done. I'm ordering it now. So I think what Tesla is doing is brilliant, and they're going down the entire list of reservation holders, and they're going to sell it to the highest bidder. And once they run out of the highest bidder, and I know they'll keep driving down the price, but that's such a cool truck, and we want to drive first ones in Montreal.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you guys can help me figure out what to do. Okay, Simon, Jeff, and Xander, let me figure out what to do. I'm about to buy a new Tesla, 1.99% financing. You got the FSD transfer. I got a previous Tesla Model 3, 2020. Do I go ahead and pay $8,000, get a brand new FSD paid for license in the new one? Or do I transfer the old 2022, which is going to be a hardware 3 to a new hardware 4, the new one? Do I even buy it? Maybe I just keep the FSD on the old car, don't buy it, or the other way around, right? Move it and then don't buy it for the old car. Because like you said, right? If robotaxi does happen, all Tesla's value will go up anyways, regardless whether or not you've already purchased it or you haven't purchased FSD. What would you guys recommend?
Can I comment, Herbert, on the hardware?
Yeah.
So the same friend actually has a Model X. He's on hardware, I guess it's 2 actually, and he's not getting the 12 version on his FSD. And so he actually went to Tesla and asked them, and I think it was around $1,500, $2,000 to change the hardware. Can anybody confirm on that? But I don't think it's a huge cost to upgrade the hardware on the vehicle and so if that's a concern, I would say, well, that's the cost of it. But if you're going from like an old Model 3 to a new Model 3, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
What's a no-brainer? Go ahead and buy it and pay another $8,000 just to own it. That part.
Are you able to transfer?
Yeah, you can transfer, but I'm just going like, why? Okay, should I transfer or do I just go ahead and buy it again?
Why would you want to buy it again if you could transfer it for free?
So why don't I want both? So what's the benefit of owning FSD outright for both cars versus just owning it for one?
Oh, I understand. So you're thinking of having 2 cars, 2 Teslas.
Yeah. What do you think?
Got it,
What do you
got
think,
it, got
Jeff or Xander?
I mean, if you have infinite amount of money, you should buy an infinite amount of things.
What? Yeah, it's not the money. I don't think that that's a concern. It's just like, what is the value? I prefer to go ahead and buy the 8,000. That's where I'm leaning towards. Have it on both cars, owning it. But then I go, well, even if I don't actually own it, the value of that car will go up anyways. And then if you wanted to, you can do the monthly fees if you want to start robotaxing it out there, right? So what's the value of actually owning the full FSD?
Yeah, I mean, look, it comes down to really comes down to money, but why would like you could subscribe, the break even is 6.7 years or something like that. Transfer it, and then when the need arises, do it. I mean, I kept my Model Y, waiting to kind of find out what's going to happen with robotaxi event, now 1010, with that in mind of that it'll be the greatest unlock. But at the same time, until we actually see it, uh, will there be opportunities to buy used Teslas with FSD? Yeah. So it just comes down to, do you have extra resources that you want to be happy now versus potentially maybe someday?
Yeah, I'm actually thinking of buying a used one for my daughter because right now FSD is not being valued at all for the used cars, and you're like, "Oh, this is like the greatest, like a gem that I know that few people do. Why did I buy a car?" Right? They don't. It's not part of the value. So
In terms of FSD versus robotaxi, this is my conclusion, but maybe Jeff, Sander, you guys can add your thoughts. I actually think that it's possible that there's FSD where you can use on a regular basis on your day-to-day drives, and of course, it saves you time. And I think they'll offer or you will be able to offer the robotaxi for free, and Tesla's just going to take a cut. So I don't think that any vehicles won't have the ability. I don't think you have to have the FSD in order to offer robotaxi. Can you guys comment to that?
I don't know.
I
I'm
would
losing
get.
interest. I'm losing interest in this conversation.
I would comment.
Sorry,
I love it.
I'm just
I
being
would just.
open.
Yeah, I would comment that it's if you have FSD, you get one one sort of percentage, and if you don't have FSD, exactly correct. Why can't Tesla just make York if you want to make a car available, but the percentage split is different? That makes sense.
all right. Well, sorry, Jeff. Well, I was going to ask another question. Might bore you to hell. So this last week,
Sorry,
RBC analysts said that you know how these analysts, institutional analysts, are now starting to at least agree that robotaxi is going to come, and then some of them are saying yes, it's going to come, but not till 2040. This RBC analyst came out and said that I think a critical catalyst for the stock price, if Tesla reduces the price of FSD, they think that that could be something that could make the stock jump, and that's what they're recommending. Anybody want to comment on that?
I think they just did, right? I mean, they offered a lower entry point package. I mean, they did in April or May, right? They lowered the monthly, and then now they lowered the monthly, and then the full, and now they created an interim bundle, which I think is the future of what Tesla is going to do. I think they're just going to, they have this fixed asset with the supercharger network that they're depreciating over a greater and greater volume of vehicles, and then so they're increasing the utilization of that while they're growing it, and then they've got the full self-driving capability, and they're going to use these assets, and then they've got insurance, which I think is the next thing to drop, and they're just going to continue to create these bundles that create a value for consumers, that if they went out in their discrete life and said, I'm going to be on a gas powered vehicle, I'm going to go buy my own insurance, and who gives a shit if it drives itself or not, the cost of doing that alternative versus buying the Tesla bundle, it's going to be a no-brainer to buy the Tesla bundle. It's not there yet, but it will get there.
Okay.
So I think they are doing it. I think they are doing it is the short answer.
All right. I'm going to let you choose between 3 topics because I don't want to bore you. So you choose the one that excites you the most.
I remember I was just kidding.
No, I'm just having fun too. It's okay.
Yeah.
So you could choose. Do you want to do Kathy Wood? Do you want to do the Trump interview? Or do you want to do, oh God, I lost the third top. Figure robots, talking about competitors to Tesla. Which one do you want to talk about?
It's meant to only be me, but we haven't talked about Figure lately. I think a lot of people have talked about the Trump interview ad nauseum, but maybe let the audience vote too. But yeah, I mean, I can talk about Figure if you want.
Okay, so why don't I do this? I'll combine the 2 topics. See, good, eh? So the Kathy Wood was interviewed last week by the Tesla Iced Coffee podcast, and she said a couple of things that are very interesting. One was, obviously her fund is all about the disruptive technologies. Elon has cited her 3 times in the last annual shareholder meeting as the analyst with the best reporting on the robotaxi potential. But she called Elon the maestro of the convergence of these disruptive technologies. And she said that it's all about data. And then, of course, Elon talked about the massive amount of data that the bots can do because they can get visual, feel, touch, hearing, maybe even, and seeing things that is reality, like walking around in reality, doing things in reality. He gave the example of pouring water into a cup. So, that is one of the major advantages that they would have. Who can make the most? Of course, Tesla has the scale capability, and then Figure Robotics dropped their 2nd generation last week. Brett Adcock, the CEO, was boasting, saying this is the most advanced humanoid bot out there right now. And of course, a lot of the Tesla community reacted poorly to that. I actually don't understand personally why people are attacking so much. I mean, if he himself is boasting, and then of course his meme was not helping, not that it helps it, but it was actually also pretty, in there, right? Who's the captain now? He says. So yes, he deserves to be hit back. But this idea that people are calling him a fraud, when what is the data to prove or back up people's claims other than he just gives me the heebie-jeebies kind of thing, right? So who wants to address that?
I can start. I'm not in the fraud camp unless someone you can really start connecting like multiple data points together as it relates to bot. I don't think there's enough publicly available information on that, but yeah, I mean, I thought the whole tweet was bizarre, but I also think it was honestly just a play to like get a response out of get a lot of engagement and get a lot of people looking at his company at the demo. So that was a media strategy to get a lot of earned media and to get a lot of people looking at the link for his company and the link of the video. So for that, I'm like, I'm fine with whatever. I'm fine with it. But when it comes down to the facts of being able to build one of these things and build the whole thing about bot is going to be scale and of course getting the generative AI piece and of course the AI piece around this thing being able to move through the world. You have to get all of those factors working together. You need a company that can get all of those factors to working at scale and get the unit economics right. And if you take the most recent example of EV and then EV plus autonomy, I think there's only going to be one company that gets both EV profitably and then EV plus autonomy, very profitably done, and for at least for a number of years, for many years, and that would be Tesla. So I think the companies I think there is room for many, and there will be room for many companies to make humanoid robots. The question is what piece of the profit pool are they going to own, and how distributed is that profit pool? Are they going to own, for example, are they going to own the hardware and manufacturing? Are they going to own the generative AI, the actual brain behind it, the language model, and that piece of it. Are they going to own the ability from an AI perspective to move this thing throughout the world? Are they going to own it down to the silicon layer and the software that runs on that silicon? And those are kind of the questions, because once the more of that you own, the more of the total business model you can dictate, and the less margin that you're giving away to everybody else. So I think that's what it comes down to. It comes down to how many of those components can you own and vertically integrate? How many can you actually execute upon? I think there's real zeros in the column right now when it comes down to manufacturing at scale. There's a lot of these competitors that are, I would rate very low or just totally unproven on that. And I think that's ultimately what they should be focusing on. But that whole thing of I'm the captain, that was really to get eyeballs looking at his latest demo.
Exactly. So he did confirm today. Somebody asked him, "What's your plans for manufacturing?" He said it's in-house is what he's going to do. Sawyer, welcome to join us. We're talking about figure robotics, and then a last week interview by Kathy Wood. Any comments on how you feel about FigureBot?
So I don't know a bunch about Figure or Brett himself. Having said that, I kind of look at Figure in some similar ways to Waymo right now. Waymo is probably the most impressive self-driving technology on the road right now in terms of they're already doing driverless rides. Long term, I think Tesla will surpass them, but Tesla's not doing completely driverless rides yet. Having said that, we don't yet know if Google's Waymo can do this at scale profitably. And like right now, you can't just plunk a Waymo vehicle, in the middle of rural Kansas, and it's just going to work on those roads. It's just not going to do that. Whereas you can do that for the most part with Tesla's system. Now with Figure, they're low volume right now. They're not even in manufacturing yet, but they have some prototypes, right? They're really impressive. They have these, impressive videos that they post online. But we have no clue if they can. Brett, you just said is they're going to manufacture these things in house. They really have no expertise or history of manufacturing, so we can't compare it to anything that they've done before. Whereas Tesla, on the other hand, is probably some of the best manufacturing expertise in the world. They've done this many times. They have really good minds in house, and they probably have the best setup in terms of unit economics to be able to profitably scale this, and much quicker than everybody else. So that would be my, and of course Figure announces all these partnerships, with BMW, I think it was, with OpenAI, NVIDIA, Microsoft. That's all great, but can they profitably make these things at scale, and do they have enough compute power to be able to train these massive, models to be able to make these things work in the real world reliably? And I would say Tesla's far ahead in that. They're about to, unveil their Cortex supercomputer cluster, and Gigatex is 100,000 units, H100 equivalent. It's hard to compete with as a smaller startup. The figure is you're going to need a lot of money.
Okay, but what's the question is, why is so much of the Tesla community quite adamant that it's a fraud, or that he's lying, or things are just whatever fishy? I don't know what the right words are, but there's a lot of attacks.
I think because we've been through this a little bit with other EV startups, right? It happened with Nikola. A lot of people are skeptical about Lucid's long-term viability. So now that Tesla's stepping into the humanoid robot atmosphere, there's other competitors to Tesla for that. So I think people are just skeptical naturally of what others can do, and just flashy videos, right?
Yeah, go ahead, Omar.
Yeah, I think people are just way too impressed by a video or an announcement and don't really think through these products. I mean, and we've seen it so many times where a company comes out with a flashy demo and they completely fail to deliver. I mean, Nikola had some flashy videos of the truck. It looked like a great truck flying down that highway until we realized that the camera was tilted and the car couldn't actually move itself at all. The truck couldn't. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily what's happening here, but in terms of the competitive landscape for humanoid robots, I look at maybe Boston Dynamics. They've typically done hydraulically actuated robots, but now they're getting into electrically actuated robots. I look at China and the manufacturing sector there, Unit Tree and Digit and some of those robots. those humanoids there. I think those, I think China will be a big part of the humanoid market. They already are actually producing a ton of robots. Um, Figure, I don't really know if they're going to be competitive at a global scale or not. When you kind of look into Brett Adcock and his business history, he's never actually launched a successful business or a successful product before. His previous company, Archer, was supposed to have these flying cars that would fly you around within your city from one place to another. They went public via a SPAC merger. And then there was some disagreement, and Brett and some of his team were pushed out of the company. And then they went and started Figure basically, 1 year after Optimus. So they're clearly trying to capture some of the hype here, but they don't have a track record of actually delivering a product of this magnitude. They don't have any experience in training a state-of-the-art model. They don't have a giant training cluster. I consider them to be a less serious entrant than, say, Hyundai and Boston Dynamics, or a lot of the startups in China, just because of the team and their track record. Now, they could totally amaze us and come out with a great product, but I'm not necessarily going to give them credit for that until I see it, right? I mean, a lot of people have made a humanoid robot before. The key here is, can you really make something that is intelligent, that can do tasks with insane reliability? And that's really what's new. And I'm not sure that the marketing videos I've seen from them have necessarily given me confidence that they'll be able to do it better than Tesla, Boston Dynamics, or some Chinese firm.
Okay, yeah, both of those answers are fair. It's just the whole, a lot of the Tesla community is attacking. Now, again, I'm not saying they shouldn't, because Brett himself is also attacks back. So I can see why that is happening. So Simon, you are a portfolio manager. And you certainly are investing in Tesla because of Robotaxi. I've interviewed you a couple times. What's your thoughts about the bot, and when would you start to quantify that in your projections and forecasts? No, Simon's not there.
Sorry, Herbert. I just got a call from my wife. What was the question again?
Yeah, so you're a portfolio manager, and then you value Robotaxi. When will you value the bot?
There's not a nothing to it. It's actually one of the reasons why we're invested in it, because it's just so massive. It's kind of like, if you look out 10 years on an investment and you say, okay, I've got $100 invested today, and I'm fairly confident that that $100 investment could be worth we'll call it a 10 bagger, say $1,000 in 10 years. And that's your low estimate. So, and because it's so difficult, I've talked about this before, about how do you project cash flows when you're in early stages, and you make a slight change in early stages, and it can be exponential 10, 15, 20 years. So it's a place you have to be. Do I see, I agree with Jeff. Is there anybody else that has the compute, that has the ability to manufacture at scale at a low cost, that's efficient, that can drive down cost and be able to build the brains and the machine? And actually their specialty isn't even the brains and the machine, it's building the machine that builds the machine. So I can, and Elon will come back and say, look, making prototypes is easy, mass production difficult. We know this with Tesla vehicles. I think I view the Tesla vehicles as just a warm-up. They're figuring out the manufacturing process. Elon and the rest of the team are just figuring it out, and we think they're brilliant now. They're just getting warmed up. And so if you look back to my example of, in conservative case, and you say, okay, it could be worth And Elon has talked about this at the shareholder meeting. But if you say $100 is worth $1,000 10 years from now, or it could be worth $10,000, and that's sort of your spectrum. Do you invest in this company? Do you own a piece of it in your portfolio when you have a strong conviction based on all the data, and that's the data that are they executing? Who cares about Elon politics? Who cares about short-term numbers of EV growth or car or cars building inventory or a slow economy? Is the company executing? Are they executing on AI? Yes. Is there anybody else that's close to have full self-driving capabilities? Not that I'm aware of. Is there anybody that can be as competitive and price conscious running their business? So I know I'm getting a little bit long-winded, Herbert, but our take on this is that, even if it's a 10x over the next 10 years, that's a tremendous investment. And if it's 100x, then obviously you've hit more than a home run.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Simon, thank you. So you gave the reason why to invest, but not necessarily add to your forecast per se. I can see that makes sense. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.